This is the segment where we shed some light on all the people, groups and organisations. Oh, Ruby, let's have the theme music actually for Holier Than Thou. I forgot about that. Yes, there we go. That's more like it. This is the segment where we shed some light on all the people, groups and organisations dodging public accountability this week. Kicking off the list, John Tamahere and the Māori Party. Now, the Māori Party seem to be making a splash this election, as we've actually discussed this morning. Co-leaders Rawiri Waititi and Debbie Ngāwere have this uncanny ability to attract media attention through their radicalism and outlandish statements, claims and action. I'm not a fan of democracy being one of them. Actually, Ruby, can you play that one as well? I'm not a fan of democracy.
I'm not a fan of democracy.
There you go. Isn't that great? That's from our friend Rawiri Waititi. One more time, because that's actually quite important.
I'm not a fan of democracy.
He's not a fan of democracy. They've been at the centre of some drama this week as one of their young candidates has allegedly had her house broken into twice in what they have said are politically motivated attacks. Now, no one should face intimidation of that kind for political reasons, or for any reasons for that matter, but the nature of the events and the fact that they occurred in a political context and were in many ways used as a stick with which to prod their political adversaries has meant that we were naturally inclined to ask some questions of the Māori Party and its spokesperson on this issue, Mr. John Tamahere. Now, I don't know what other media outlets get back in response to asking John for an interview, but I very much doubt it comes close to the sort of unhinged, vitriolic outrage that exploded in our direction when we asked. We wanted to know details about the investigation, whether they'd reveal the note left by the crook, which supposedly would prove the attack was politically motivated, and just a general interview to establish the facts and clear up any misconceptions. Mr. Tamahere responded to this in just about as poorly a manner as you possibly could, exclaiming that white folk like you, referring of course to Sean Plunket, are all the same, use the same terminology, have the same views. In the same text, he launched into a remarkable tirade, exclaiming that, seemingly claiming, to be fostering a revolution against the establishment. 25% of all babies in the country are Māori, he cried. The more folk like you that target us, the more we will organise, stuff like that. I mean, I've only been in the media game for a short while, but this is certainly... that was certainly among one of the most astonishing responses to a media inquiry I've ever witnessed. It's worth noting, of course, that we responded to this text reminding John that we have every right to ask questions of a political party seeking votes in an election year, which he responded to by calling Sean a mongrel and suggesting he was harassing him. So for all of those reasons, the Māori Party and their president, John Tamahere, make the Holier Than Thou list this week.
Wow.
Next, that's the first, we're only just getting started.
Oh my gosh.
Because next up we've got Lee Donoghue. Now, some of you remember we reached out to him following his appearance at the Young Leaders debate, where he had to stand in front of a room full of 20-year-old Aucklanders and rattle off anti-globalist, anti-woke catch cries, which I have to say is not an enviable task. But I thought he did the best he could with the ammunition he had, so we reached out to him to give him the chance to come on and introduce himself and his mission to our listeners, an offer which at first he gracefully accepted. What happened next, though, in a confusing twist of fate, was that I received an email from his campaign manager, which, as far as I could tell, appeared to be his mum, explaining that something had come up and he was no longer available to appear on the platform. Now, I immediately thought something was up at this point because things seem to come up quite a bit with New Zealand First candidates at the moment, usually a few hours before they're scheduled to appear on our program. But I took their word for it when his campaign manager, his mum, said he'd be very keen to reschedule for the following week. So what did I do? I got in touch with Mr. Donoghue again the following week to reschedule. He responded to this with, unfortunately, I am not available to appear on the platform at this time. I'm sure you understand. I did not understand at all and made that very clear. After all, his campaign manager, his mum, had only said a few days earlier how he was keen to reschedule for the following week. So I responded with words to that effect and have been waiting for a response ever since. So welcome, Mr. Donoghue, to the Holier Than Thou Hall of Shame. Finally this week, and this is a late edition, it was recently revealed that a new global initiative is being led by Group M, a media investment company, in what appears to be an attempt to position themselves as the global authority on journalistic credibility by creating a sort of tick or certification which media companies can apply for, which gives them access to a wider range of potential advertising clients. This seems, without knowing much more about the case, to be little more than an ad agency mansplaining an answer to a question no one was asking in the first place. But what do I know? That's why I got in touch with John Halpin, the CEO of the New Zealand branch of Group M, to try and get some idea of how this initiative would impact the media landscape in New Zealand, what issues it would potentially solve or indeed create, and what the next steps were. We have had nothing but answering machines, silence, and crickets in response to that. So thank you to Group M for trying to save journalism, but by driving advertisers away from media companies that say stuff you don't like, but do try to respond to some media inquiries from now on, because the platform might try to go for the woke tick ourselves. Why not? I think if it's out there,
Wow.
give it a crack.
I mean, there's nothing What the worst they can say is no.
The
right?
worst they could say is no.
The worst
That's
they can
exactly
say
right.
is no. So
They could swipe left on the platform, which wouldn't surprise me. But in any case, Group M and John Halpin round off the Holier Than Thou list for this week. As usual, thank you to everyone who did front for us, with us, and engage in democracy in the way
you know what you need? You need some,
you're supposed to do.
You need some flaming, crackling sound to go on while you've got that roast going. Because you're just roasting people.
But what we do have is the Holier Than Thou theme, which we'll play to round off this edition. Well done to the Holier Than Thou list contenders for this week. Have a word with yourselves, because we'll be back next week to keep you accountable.